Okay, hello everyone. So today we are back with another focus tutorial, and as you can see, well, if you saw the reference and the line drawing already posted, you would know that we are doing a dog's eye, in particular a French Bulldog's eye. I quite like the little details in the eye itself, so we're going to focus on that, like with the eye focus tutorial for the horse. We are going to do some fur detailing, maybe work on what we learned with the last focus tutorial. This is also short fur and got some very nice like little folds in here that we can focus on. This will also make a very nice in-depth tutorial. It's got a very nice muzzle detail and everything, so we might just circle back to some of these focus tutorials for in-depth tutorials, which I think would be fun. So yeah, we are going to get started obviously with the eye itself, and then we'll go from there. I'll also always, like always, be telling you exactly what we're using, and by now, if you watched a few tutorials, you'll know I always start with my trusty 2H, so that is what we're going to be doing. Yeah, and this is, I think this is A5. Yeah, I just put a A4 in half, so this should go by quickly. Let's hope so. Otherwise, I might just get distracted and work on it for longer than I should. But anyways, let's get going. So I'm going to start with the eye. Start in this top corner over here. And we're just going to start mapping out everything. I gave you a basic line drawing of which has the majority of the major points, including highlights and shadows. And then we'll fill in from there. You can always use the line drawing and add in extra details if you would like, but with this the extra details is just fur and I don't deem that necessary to add. So this is the little black ring on the eye. There is some fur coming down here, but we'll focus on that later. So for now I'm just filling in, but I'm not really paying too much attention to maybe adding in some little details in the eye itself. But other than that, not really paying too much attention because we are going in with our dark as tones, everything later on. So it's got a very nice little highlight here. We will keep that white for now. It does have some reflections in this part of the eye, this small little ring. But we'll also look at that when we get there. I don't think this should take too long. I mean, Let's hope I just don't procrastinate too much. So I do have a habit. I can focus longer on a drawing, but I just don't in general. So I'm going to take a blending stump. Going to leave this, we're going to only focus on this for now. So I'm just going to, this is a dark little ridge surrounding the eye. This is the whites of the eye. And we're just going to take this down here. There you go. So the white of the eye, you can see it's the white of the eye, but it's not going to be white when we're done with it, because it's only got a significant highlight over here. The rest of it's kind of shadowed. So we just put in a little shadow in here and then just take our blending stump and just work around like that. Now we're going to go in with a B pencil. And we are going to start building up from what we put on with our 2H. So I'm going to start, I'll generally start normally in the same little area where I worked on in the beginning. Where I started in the beginning, so I started in this little corner, so I'm generally a creature of a habit anyways. So I normally start back there, so. Or I can choose the darkest point and go from there. So now we're going to look a bit more from what's going on in this little tear duct area. Leave out those little, it's got these little highlights in it. Just some definition. Take the pointed side and be a bit more precise. Leave that little highlight open for now. And then we're just going to continue around with a darker ring around the eye. It's quite dark on the outside and then it blends inwards into, it's got some very beautiful color. I am looking into buying some pastel pencils. I was initially going to buy colored pencils, but then the more I started to look at pastel pencil artists and the way they draw and the finished look of the drawings, I feel like it's much more my style. It feels much more like graphite pencil, the blendability of it and the look of it I quite like. So I think I'm rather going to go in the pastel pencil direction than colored pencils. I don't know, the look of it and the way it blends and is put onto paper I quite enjoy. So I'm gonna I still have to buy myself a few pastel pencils and also pastel mat. First I have to locate that. It's not always easy to get your hands on in South Africa, but yeah, so once I familiarize myself with that would be something that will become available for tutorials, but that will only be much later, as you need to grow confidence with it, and in order to tell someone else, okay, this is my technique, this is how I do it, you know. So yeah, I'm really looking forward to it. I've been itching to buy me some for a while now, but it does cost a pretty penny, especially if I want the full set that is available. So yeah, And pastel matte paper, the Clairefontaine, is not cheap. Not cheap at all. So I'm going to take my blending stump and just blend on out. As you can see, it's still it's not very precise. Paying attention to stuff, but we're not really harping on the details just yet. And these little blending stumps are sometimes very nice if you want to add in detail, not detail, but add in shading or pencil where you haven't worked yet. So it does work quite well for that. Going to go back with my B pencil, find where I put each. There. And we're just gonna, I can go in with a darker pencil, but I don't think it's necessary now. The reason I left that little strip open there is a very fine highlight. It's a lot thicker than it is in the reference, but I sometimes do that just so that I don't lose it. But we will make it smaller as we go along. So I'm using the tip of the pencil more. Normally I use the flat side, just to be more precise a bit. So there's also a very nice subtle highlight at the top here. So we'll also be mindful of that. Not paying too much attention to the reflection in this part of the eye just yet. There's a very distinct reflection highlight right over here, so I am keeping that clear of pencil for now. Working on this little corner, there is a highlight on the inside here, but that will be shaded in along with the whites of the eye. I'm just gonna kind of put it there for now. On here underneath, and this connects with this little piece right here. I always find it helpful to see where it connects and where it goes. That does help when you kind of, before you actually just draw the line, just see where it's actually going. Does it connect to anything? Taking the sharp edge of the pencil, and we're just kind of putting in that little sharp little area over there. I'm going to take my 2H, not going to do any blending, just going to take the 2H and use that to kind of start blending in, maybe start working on areas we haven't touched yet, like the inside of the eye, defining some areas a bit more, like there. There is some very subtle little details and nuances in the eye itself, but that is will be built up as we go along through the layers. I just find it easier to do it that way. Build up the detail. Just kind of doesn't overwhelm you, especially with a highly detailed piece. Just take it back step for step. And I still haven't touched an eraser for highlights. That's all on the agenda, but not yet necessarily. Sometimes for other pieces I'll do it a lot quicker, but for this one I'm still kind of putting everything in. I'm not going to be very detailed a bit because it looks like there's counters. It almost looks like it's either a living, I think it's a living room. There's a table right here and there's something there in the back, and obviously that highlights his windows. But yeah, if the piece is bigger, this is just small. That will be very nice added little touch. I always like drawing in the reflections of the eyes. I think it's a fun little thing, especially if they are visible. It gives context to something outside of the drawing and gives them something to look at, maybe a little detail for the viewer to see when they're looking at the drawing. It's like a little Easter egg. I quite like it. I always check to see if I can figure out what they were looking at when the photo was taken. So I always try to put it in. It's my little thing. I don't think some artists might leave it out. I don't know. I think if it was in a studio set, taken in a studio setting, I don't think there would be such a obvious reflection of something in the eye, but I quite like adding it in. So I'm just going to take my blending stump, just kind of blend this in. I am going to take my eraser now. We are going to start playing around because we kind of just fold it in now. So you can take your putty eraser and just put it to a nice point, or you can take a piece of normal eraser that you've cut into little sharp points. You can take a mono eraser. I know you get other types of erasers that comes in these little tubes that you just squeeze or turn out. You can use that as well and cut it into a point. If you can't access this, you make your own. That's what I always learned. You kind of make a plan, you know. Work with what you have. You don't always need the fancy tools. The fancy tools just normally make it easier for you, but you can easily make. So what I'm looking at for these highlights is you've got the darker pupil area and iris, and the right, I think it's the iris. Parts of my knowledge of eye anatomy has kind of left my brain, but yeah. So there's this little highlighty ring, so I'm kind of just looking at that. It's like a softy beigey thing, and then you get the very nice deep orange red ochreish type of color. So I'm looking at that little off yellow beigey type of ring that's surrounding the eye. That's what I'm looking at, and that's what I'm highlighting out. Not entirely highlighting out, but I'm just kind of for myself And I also kind of removed some of these little things, the furniture, just playing around with the shapes. I know now it's furniture, but I'm still gonna see it as shapes. You don't want to overcomplicate it, because then your mind's gonna be like, oh, I need to make it look like this and this and this. Just draw the shape. It's much easier. And as we go along, it will become a lot easier to just show in the shapes. Now I'm going to go in with something a little bit darker. Where's my 3B pencil? I'm going to take my 3B pencil. There we go. And I'm going to start in this corner over here. And we're just going to start kind of defining the shadows. Kind of differentiating them from the rest of the drawing. Giving them a bit more definition. As you can see, I'm not making this highlight a bit thinner. It still needs, it's not this highlighted, so it will be, I will blend over it and just make the sides of it darker. So unless I'm trying to be precise, like over here, I am still using quite soft pressure. Yeah, there's some little ridges, just putting that in. It's also not completely white, so I'm just drawing in over top with the 3B pencil and kind of defining the areas around it. So unless it's a really like white highlights, I'll start layering over it, and once we start moving into the B pencils, I'll start defining everything around it, and then it will start standing out a bit more. And once I got this in, I'll start shading in this, just so that it's not stark white, it's actually quite in the shadows. So we'll start putting in that white of the eye as well. Just nuancing the panes of the windows. Playing around with the shapes in the eye. If you don't want to draw in the reflections, you're more than welcome to not do it. But that's just the little touches I like to add. I quite enjoy doing that. So I'm going to take my 2H now, and we are going to start adding in the whites of the eye, shading. And there is some veining here. We'll put that in the end. I'm not too worried about it now. And once we got this part covered, I will put in these little eyelashy first things that come over this part of the eye. I think it's always easier just to, once you start drawing what you see, the shapes that you see, and not the actual item. Like if you know it's a eye, just draw the shapes in the eye. If you see it's dark, put in the dark values. If you see there's this random little, draw the shapes. I mean, it's so easy. You know, in theory it's easy, but once you start ignoring what you're actually drawing and just looking at the, break it down into shapes and forms and little bits and pieces, I think it becomes a bit more manageable, and you start kind of forgetting what the end goal is. You still keep it in the back of your mind, but it just helps to override your brain to thinking this is how it should look. But there's some subtle little shapes and bits and bobs in there that you kind of can miss if you try and look at the whole picture, not the smaller pieces. So this is my B pencil. I'm just putting, I went in with a 2H, now I'm just putting in the subtle little shadows. There's like, it's highlighted in this part to show the ball, like that it goes around it. And then there's some nice little like depth there, what goes in. It's like a shadow here and a shadow here, and then it becomes very white over here. So we're just putting a very soft pressure. Don't want to put in too much. I'm going to go inside the eye with the B pencil, soft pressure, and just start. Now with this part you don't need to be very particular with the shapes. If you want to be very precise and pedantic and go like I must draw exactly what there is, I generally don't do it, especially for these very random and odd shapes. As long as it gives me the feel of what it gives me in the reference, then I'm very satisfied with it. Now if you are that type of person, I would suggest that in your line drawing you put that in, because that's the only way I can think of if you want to be that precise, is to put in the actual forms and shapes in the line drawing. And that's where some people differ with their line drawing in the initial sketching out or planning phase, is they'll put in all those little details that they want to be very precise about. I'm just very precise about everything being in proportion with each other, and that the major players of the drawing is there for me. The rest of it I kind of just wing it, as they say. That's kind of my little thing. I want to know where the major stuff goes, and then the rest around it I'll just figure it out as I go along. And that in itself is quite helpful to learn yourself to do, is to fill in the missing pieces, fill in the gaps. And I think that helps with my detail. It's just to be very mindful of it all, because I didn't put it in. I still need to use everything else, just using blending stuff and blending in everything, just to kind of, it's kind of like freehand drawing, but you're doing it whilst you're shading in. I quite like that. So, and I'm a very loose sketcher, so I generally have to go in as I start shading and need to start becoming precise about where I put things, and then I actually add in all the details and everything. So I'm gonna go in with a I want to go in with a 5H, but I don't know. Yeah, I'm going to go in with a 5H, and I'm just going to work in this area and maybe the whites of the eye itself. And this will also add an extra layer of like blending. So we're going in with a paint. I am going to shade in this. This is not going to stay this white. Definitely not. I'm one of those people, I like the whole page, the whole area to be covered. Whatever you're drawing should be covered in some form of layer of pencil. Even if it's just a light dusting of graphite powder. I don't just like to leave it white, completely blank. But that's just me. I know there are some people that will leave it white, but I just tend to, I'm just with this 5H, gonna make it not white paper and just fill in the gaps. And as you can see, if you are noticing, it does blend in quite well. Kind of, it's not a very noticeable layer, but it does do something. Especially if you do it over these very light layers that are blended. With graphite powder, it works very nicely. Once you get to these little layers where you added more B pencil, it will become definitely less noticeable and you're like, why am I using this pencil? But for all the other things, I think it works very well, especially when I add subtle details or just round out the details that you are putting in. I think it works quite well. And it does get the jobs done, so it does work in a sense. Starting to play around with whatever's going on here. Obviously this isn't as dark as it's going to be, this whole little area here. Since it's darker than this. But we're building it up. So I'm gonna go into the whites of the eye. Circular motions. With the H pencils, I tend to use more pressure just so that I can see what they're doing, kind of make them a meaningful choice in why I pick them up. But it's just generally, I think, a bit more natural to be harder handed with them because they are harder lead. Just gonna use it to blend up here. And then very nice to fill in the gaps when you use the B pencil to just kind of blend it in. Over that highlight, see there I'm going over that highlight. Use a blending stump. There we go. Need to grab some water. So very quickly, I mean this is in a half an hour, you quickly formed, you can see what it is now. It's a basic shape. And that's very quick layering. I think if you go in with the detail, you kind of get stuck in it. So this just, for me, is the quickest way. So now I'm going to go in with something even darker. With a, if I can find something I want to go dark with, 6B pencil. I really need to get to the art store and buy myself some pencils, especially B range pencils, because mine is, all of them are becoming very short and almost to the point where I can't use them anymore, even in their pencil extenders. Okay, 6B, we're now going in dark, 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 dark. Really putting in that shadow. This obviously isn't the darkest we're going to go. And we still haven't done a lot of erasing, so still not as light as we can go. So we've got still got some very nice highlights to add and shadows to add. So I'm just going to go over those highlights ever so softly and slightly. Yeah, I'm going to go darker to differentiate it from this little patch here. And obviously you want this to be a different tone than this. And this is substantially lighter actually, I feel, than this. So we're still gonna, so I think if I make this darker, it will help with that look. Just focusing a bit on the darker parts in the pupil. Kind of defining it more. There we go. Obviously this would be much easier, that little area, if it was bigger. It's technically quite small. But it's good to learn how to allude to detail rather than actually putting it in. So there are some little textures and little lines and things, so I'm going to kind of, with this B pencil, not B pencil, 6B pencil, just kind of add it in very subtly. It's not going to be, make this darker as well. I'm almost coming to the point where I want to start defining the outside areas around the eye, just so that we have something to play our values off of. I'm gonna make this even darker. Yeah, so I'm actually gonna take my mono eraser. Just gonna put in, there's this little highlight that I covered, put that in. Take that out. Take your 6B if you cover it out too much. There we go. The only thing with these erasers that are not the putty erasers, they get covered with a pencil, especially if you're erasing over B pencil parts. They get covered quite quickly, and you need to clean them a bit more. very softly erasing over here, not too much. There we go. Take my blending stump. I'm gonna take graphite powder now because I like putting down a layer of graphite powder, especially when I'm doing like fur. So I'm quickly gonna do that. Let me just check. I think there is no. Let's add a bit more. Tap off a bunch, a lot, and then we're just gonna add off the top. Like for bigger areas, I won't tap off that much. But since this isn't a very large area, and it goes quite far, so I'm just gonna do the immediate area surrounding the eye. Kind of just flare out the excess. And that's kind of why I don't like leaving paper white, because I prefer working off of pencil of paper that's actually been covered in a very thin layer. And I'm just gonna go over the eye itself, just for good measure, because I can, and I like doing that. So 2H pencil. Need to find the sharper one. Oh, probably said in 2 tutorials now. I need to find a bit to sharpen it. Okay, we're gonna start down here with the whites of the eye. This little, so there's a ridge of like bottom lid over here, and then it goes into fur. So this looks odd now, this little space down here. So we're gonna work on that first. So I'm just taking my 2H, and like we did in the beginning, I'm just gonna map out everything. And I'm gonna kind of start here at the top as well, kind of connect what's going on. So there is some detail. Skin detail. Some very nice highlights. The highlights will really help. The highlights and the sharp shadow next to it will really help define that texture. I will be doing like, I think, material texture and leather texture and metal texture and skin texture might be very good tutorials in the future, because you don't know when you're going to come across them. And I think it just helps sometimes, because those techniques are transferable over to other things. So I think that will be good adventures as well. And I know with some dogs or some animals, pets, the client will sometimes maybe request that they're drawn in something, maybe a bow tie, or there's a bandana, or, you know, like in the winter, I know with our old man, for the winter we put on a little jacket for him, just for extra warmth. And maybe sometimes you'll have to draw the pets in that, or a horse with a blanket on, or a horse with a saddle pad, or sheepskin maybe somewhere on the tack, or the rider's clothing, or maybe the owner wants to be in the portrait with the pets and you've got to... So yeah, I think all of those techniques is good to learn, and they're kind of transferable. So once you kind of know the basics, it's quite simple. Take my blending stump. And why I'm blending in this now is because I'm going to take a mono eraser, erase that a little bit. And I'm going to kind of use that to add in texture. So this is going to be something a bit different. Sometimes I do like trying new things. Just need to get it to a nice clean point. So, there you go. So these are going to be quite large highlights. Not going to be small and where they're supposed to look. So most of it's like little dots or lines. Obviously the bigger the drawing, the more. I am thinking of maybe doing a breed series for cats, dogs and horses. But that's something I want to do in the pipeline, like this is my 2H. I've been thinking of doing that for a while now, drawing portraits of specific breeds, profiles, you know. That's an idea, maybe drawing in the way they're perceived or in the way they were bred for, working environment wise. But that's a plan that I want to do. I want to do with, low. Like, I know dog breeds and I know horse breeds, but cats, it's like I know that's a cat, but don't ask me what type of cat it is. So cats are a bit of a mystery to me. I think if you're not a cat person, you don't know much about cat breeds. Or just cats in general. I'm not a cat person. I find dogs and horses much more enjoyable. So I'm just taking my 2H and kind of working around the highlights that I put in. It's kind of difficult to explain, just making like these little marks. It's like little triangles and little diamond shapes if you look at it. So you kind of just defining the little highlights. You're kind of making it pop out. Make like this little ridges around it. And that obviously is a built up texture. It's not something you just get in one pass and go like, oh, got it. Job well done. We can move along, you know? No. So there is this ridge here as well. So I'm just going to kind of start adding in that little line there. And it kind of first starts around here, but it's still, there's some, the black skin is peeking through, still here at the top. So I'm just going to put in the lines to say that's where I want my fur to start. And there's quite a lot of skin texture here. But this is gonna be need to be built up. It's not gonna be a one pass, and there you have it. There's your texture. And everything kind of looks the same tone and the same value now, but it will trust the process, as they say. There we go. Just going to take a small little blending stump and kind of go upwards like that. So now I'm going to take my B pencil and we're just going to continue. We're going to darken this up here. Just get the detail a bit more polished. So I'm going to try and be mindful of the little highlights as I go along. Just see, we will be going in with a darker one as well, a darker pencil. So I'm kind of being true to the placement of some of these, maybe size wise, but not really being very close to the reference. If there's a definite ridge or shadow or little detail, you need to be mindful of the shape that it's creating, where there's maybe a new form of highlights or shadows or something, to be mindful of that. But other than that, you can kind of use your own discretion. Like I said earlier, since this is small, the details are not going to be as perfect or as precise as it would a larger drawing. But if it was a larger drawing, it will take a lot more time, because then you can really focus on every small little nook and cranny. So I usually choose my large pieces quite well, depending on how much I want to spend on it, time wise that is. I will be going in just now after this with a 5H pencil, and we'll kind of work on it. So I'm making these like little square odd shapes, not like circles, because it's not all uniform and the same. Just adding a bit of texture to it. As soon as I go in with something darker and add in more highlights, the shapes will start to find themselves and they'll kind of figure themselves out. So it's very messy at the moment, just playing around with it. I'm going to take a 5H now, kind of, this won't make an enormous difference, but it's a subtle difference that I'm looking for. Kind of work in this area as well. Kind of using this to blend in the pencil. We'll be going in with something darker just now. We will further define things. Take my blending stump. And I'll also go underneath here. Like with the horse eye, we'll kind of focus on the fur, very detailed around the eye, and then kind of blend it out and blur it out. So now with taking a very, I'm going to take a very sharp B pencil. I'm going to take my 6B, a very sharp one. Well, as sharp as I'm going to get it. Because the softer the lead, the harder it is to sharpen it up. Start up here. There's not too much going on over here. About this little highlight, so we're gonna go up here. So there's kind of these little ridges within this top dark part here. And there's, let's say like lines whereby the skin texture follows. You're going to darken up that line there. I'm trying to use texture that the pencil creates on the paper to my advantage for this a little bit, and also the indents that the H pencil left. Create these subtle little like lines. I might just, for these little texture details, show you what I do with a gel pen, because I think that might be a little bit more helpful, creating that very nice little white little highlights, especially it's up here as well. There's like these little white dots. Just gonna darken up a bit more inside the tear duct. Just continue on using the 6B pencil. I'm just gonna go around and kind of darken up some things. Take my blending stump and then just blend this out. Just this little part here. As you can see, the 6B really gives off lots of little. I'm just going to take some of it over across here as well. Take just the brush, no extra powder on it. Just going to go over that. And this at the top here as well. Now I'm going to take my mono eraser. Going to clean it up. Not getting a very sharp point on it, but alas, we shall work with what we got. Oh, we got one little sharp point. So now I'm going to be a bit more precise with my erasing. I'll try to be as precise as I'm allowed with the size of my tip of the razor. I might just get my gel pen for some of these little highlights. Because it's going to be quite difficult. And there we go, a little sharper. So you can see I can't really go very small with the highlighting. So I'm taking off more than I should. And I'm just going to take a very sharp either I think I'm going to go in with a sharp 2B. Do I have a 2B around here somewhere? 4B, HB, 2B. No, I don't think I have a 2B. Huh. So I'm going to go in with a sharp 3B. You can go in with a 2B because that was my first initial thought. I'm actually going to put this 3B into a pencil extender very quickly. Just so that I have a bit more. So I'm going to sharpen it up quite quick. Might sharpen it up more quite often. And we're just going to kind of go in between where we've put those eraser marks. Push comes to shove, I will use a gel pen, and then you'll see how I utilize that as well. So I'm just areas where it's a bit lighter, or maybe add in even more. Remember, it goes, these is little, it's like cross hatching actually. That's the feel, that's kind of the overall look. But you don't want to go in and cross hatch because it's not uniform. It's the only problem. Can't actually go and cross hatch everything. So I'm not holding it right here for everywhere. Sometimes it's nice if you want to get less uniform lines to hold your pencil farther away from the tip. Just gives you, it's not as harsh. It's like, it's not less control. It's just you don't put a lot of weight into the front of the tip. So here I'm drawing lines and kind of using the cross-hatching technique. So I'm going to take my putty eraser and we're kind of going to stamp out parts of this. And I'm going to show you, going to go this general just like that. It kind of, because it's dark and then it's kind of like a ridge that's coming down. So it's dark there, ridge, and then it flows down like this. Take my 2H you kind of put in just like those types of lines. Take your 3B pencil. I'm kind of gonna put in these little like lines, dots, or marks. There. Because now the thing is, this black kind of goes into over the lapped, transitions into the fur. Sorry, my English is leaving me. See, the texture is all built up. It somewhere in the middle it looks like an absolute mess. Before that, took the putty eraser to it. There was almost like no form or function to it. But it's a build up. It's layers. You need to trust your instincts and that you kind of will instinctively know what's going on. So I'm just kind of putting down a dark layer of pencil. This is not blending it out much, taking a blending stump. Kind of go in here as well. I'm gonna actually take some actual graphite powder, not just use residue, and go over. There we go. Now before we go on, if you do have a white gel pen somewhere, or you can go get one, I quite like them. I'll just show you what I use. They call these the jelly rolls, Sakura jelly rolls. If you do a lot of, I know people that letter or do a lot of journaling or things like that, use these jelly rolls. So I'm just gonna slightly put them in. I know people that use colored pencils or mixed media, like using these types of white pens for like the white highlights. I sometimes do that, especially for very white highlights, but I'll start introducing them somewhere in the middle, and I'll just tap it out like that. It kind of blends it in, but it just adds some extra little, I don't know, detail that you can't normally add with a graphite pencil, or maybe any other pencil that you maybe struggle with. I don't typically draw like a line. It's more like a stippling technique. I do blend over it, draw over it as well, blend around it, draw around it. That also helps. As you can see, if I tap over my finger with it, and it kind of just blends it in immediately, because it does stay wet for a little bit after you put it down. There we go. Now I'm going to take a F pencil. Take my trusty little F pencil. And we're kind of going to blend it into the surrounding drawing. Some of these pencils would not very nice to sharpen. Nope. Give it maybe one more turn. There we go. So I'm going to go around it and kind of make it look organic to the drawing and not just look like it's laying on top. Because where I went over with my finger, it kind of already gave it like a grayish tint to it. I mean, it just gives it something to etch also. The little lines you put around it also start defining everything else. So I'm just going to take this F pencil and kind of just start going into the transition between this and the fur, skin and the fur. So if yours might take a bit more time. I mean, it's a technique that you get used to. I mean, I haven't done a dog in a very long time. I don't think I've ever done a detailed piece, a dog detailed piece or a cat detailed piece. So I don't work with these types of textures often, but kind of you have to take your techniques that you know and you kind of build up on it, or you'll find a strategy that will work for you. The more often you do it, the easier it will become. So I'm just going to take a putty eraser and just kind of add in that little ridge highlights, the overall tonal highlight. There we go. We'll just go over it more around the little dots we put in for the jelly roll, and we'll just create the texture within that highlighted area. So that's what I like using the putty eraser for, is if you've maybe added the texture but then you want to add in the highlight over top of the texture, you just press it on. The detail that you've put in would have stayed, but you just made it lighter, and then you just kind of build up on that. And it makes it just, I love using the putty eraser just to stamp out pencil. And with this layering technique, where you build up the pencil, it just beautifully and seamlessly takes away that top layer and gives you just some subtle differences, really. And it just saves you, it gives you something extra in the bank, that if something goes wrong, you have, it's like your insurance, you know. There we go. I want to take my mono eraser and I'm going to start adding in these little, so this in itself can also be like a little texture tutorial, little fur tutorial. And you've got to use your tools. You don't have to use exclusively just graphite and just the eraser. You can add in a multitude of other things. And it's art. It's supposed to be whatever gives you your end result. So I'm just going to take my jelly roll again, just at the top here. I'm going to add in some little highlights, and down here some little, just stamp them in. There we go. I'm just going to take my F pencil and just blend around them, integrate them into their new little home. There we go. I'm going to take my 3B pencil, my pencil extender, and we're just going to just start working on this bottom. So I'm not going to take it down very far. As you can see, short little strokes, and with that bottom layer of pencil, I can already start adding in my little pencil strokes, first strokes. Just blend that out. There we go. I'm going to take my putty eraser. And I'm going to make a nice sharp point out of it. Add in some of that little fur strokes. And we're also just gonna layer 6B pencil there where you took out some, went in with your highlighter. Just gonna short stubby strokes. Also just at the top here, make it a bit darker. Put in some lines. Extra texture lines, you know. There you go. I'm gonna go in with my putty eraser just now again, just to add in a bit more fur highlights. Yeah. Blending stump. Sharp little points, trying to take out not a lot, very big parts of it, just those little, it can maybe indicate a short hair. Take my mono eraser, just try and do the same. F pencil. Six B. I'm going to leave that for now. We've been working like that for a while now, so I'm going to move on to other areas. I'm going to take my B pencil. We're going to start working on this area right here. So this is the dark little spot above the brow. We're just using this to map out. So you can see it's all kind of has this blurry soft effect still. You still need to define and detail everything out. But we are getting to it. Take my 2H. We're just laying down base for this. And the fur here, it goes like a little whirl, like a little fur in the brow. And it comes down. So here you also just need to be mindful of fur direction, because it kind of goes in this little circular motion around the eye. Not putting any extra powder on, just using what's on there. Yeah. Blending stump. Blend out the edges more. I have to say, some people make this soft blurred out look with graphite powder very nicely, but to me sometimes when I do it myself, it's almost like you're looking at a picture with that's a bit blurred, and you're like, I need more detail, I need more sharpness. So That's just my personal preference in this whole drawing thing, is that I like a good bit of detail. This is my B pencil. Circular motions. We're just gonna, this texture is not as, it's kind of intricate, but it's not as intricate as this one's here down at the bottom. It's kind of more fur overlapping it than anything else. So I'm going to take my putty eraser and we're just going to put on those little eyelashes that are in this area over here. I'm going to take my putty eraser for this specifically because it's kind of blurred out. It's not really take my 2H. It's kind of odd because it's there but really not defined. Take it up here as well, because there is some that goes into that little part as well. I'm going to take my 3B and just kind of go in between them and underneath for that definition. There we go. And they look out of place now because they're white and not really blended into the drawing. Still taking our 3B pencil, just kind of going around. To edge, just gonna blend in this. Okay, so it's been a week or two since I looked at this drawing, so we're just gonna pick up on some random place that catches my eye. I'll most likely, let's do more work on the eye itself and then we'll go from there. So it's been a bit of a hectic, that's why these tutorials for June will be a little late. Life's been a bit cuckoo crazy on this end, so yeah, need to catch up, need to just feel a little burnt out, a bit tired. It's just been one of those periods, can't even say month or week, it just ebbs and flows and everything. So we're gonna continue on with some eyeball details, and I'm gonna take, this is actually the only Rembrandt Lera pencil I have in my collection, because the art shop didn't have this particular 2B in any of my other brands that I normally use, so I can't actually tell you if I like the whole brand of pencil or not, but this 2B has been quite useful, and does its job. So I'm going to take this 2B and we're just going to continue detailing out everything on this here little eyeball. Now making it crisp. So I'm going to continue. So for the horse eye tutorial, it will be a soft outward drawing thing. So we're just gonna continue here. And there's actually quite, if you were gonna do this in colored pencil, there would be quite a lot of shades and colors. It's got a quite deep rich color, and you can quite nice got nice detail. Sorry, my English is absolutely horrible this evening, so it might take me a while to warm up. I think I used it up all on Sunday when I was surrounded by a bunch of English people. So English is not my first language, by the way, so the well does run dry sometimes, or it just does not work. So if you were wondering why I was struggling to find my words, that's why. So I'm looking, so you've got the dark rim that's dark brownish, and then you've got the very deep like ochre brown, and then it goes into the very, very lightest like pale yellowish beigey color, and then you've got the pupil, or I don't know my eye parts, but the dark bits. So I'm looking specifically not at the pale yellowy bits, I'm looking at the very deep orange, and then obviously this darker black area in the middle. So obviously as I've gotten more into the drawing, I always initially just used black and white references. If it wasn't black and white, I'd put it in black and white. But in recent years, I've preferred to work off of color drawings. Not color drawings, color references. As sometimes when something is edited into grayscale or black and white, you can sometimes lose details or lose very fine, minute differences in values. Sometimes the shadows become a shadow when in actual fact, if you look at it in the color version, there's actually quite a bit of things happening in the shadowed parts. So I have taught myself in recent years with drawing with graphite to work off of the color reference, and I much prefer it over a black and white reference now. It's just something you have to teach yourself. It's a hurdle you have to get over, being able to get the values from colors to see if the color is just darker or lighter, if it's, all those little thingies, and I think it's quite useful. And it's definitely, I think, a skill. I mean, there's certain drama to working off a black and white reference, I get that, but just for general work, I think the color photos usually give you the most bang for your buck when it comes to detail. So I'm just darkening up the whites, and I will be in the end putting in these little veins in the eyeball. but they're not that important now. So as you can see, this 2B still adds quite a bit of depth in places. Very useful. So I'm using, as always, unlisted, otherwise, very soft pressure, circular motions, just to build up everything in the textures and the values, and just get it working from there. And then we'll go over, I think, with a bit of graphite powder and then a mono eraser into the more highlighted spots in the eye, and add some detailing from there. So as you can see, for the reflection in the actual eyeball, I'm keeping the shapes quite minimal. If this was a bigger drawing, if this was a much larger study of the portrait, I would be more inclined to be more detailed about it. But since this is just a small eye study, you want to make it look like there is actual reflections in the eye of the dog, that the dog is looking at something, but I don't want to actually distract from the overall piece since it's small by putting in too much of that detail. You kind of have to, as an artist, decide what details will become distracting or what details will add to your piece. Sometimes it's better to suggest some details rather than actually put them in, and other details is quite, I think, important, but that's depends on your aesthetic, your personal style, your personal preferences. And that's what, I mean, even if as a realism artist, I can immediately see, if I see a portrait of an animal and it's a realism artist that did it, I can still tell the artist, discern between them, because everyone's got a different style, another way of doing things. So I'm just taking graphite powder, you know the drill, put it in, tap off most of the excess, and we're just lightly buffing in. There's actually quite a lot of residue on my graphite powder, little brushy, anyways, due to another piece that I'm actually quite extensively using a graphite powder for. So I'm just going to take my mono eraser, and we're just gonna clean up these highlights, you know, add in, it's like those little white parts that you get in the eye. That's basically this, we're just alluding to the fact and creating shapes. So I think just, you know, take the most highlighted bit of whatever shape is in the reflected in the eye, and then just go from there. So there's quite a nice reflection there. It's actually smaller than I'm taking out now, but we'll clean it up as we go. And if you don't have a mono eraser, as always, you can just put your little putty razor in a point, or just cut off pieces of normal razor into little shapes that are useful. So I'm now specifically looking at the paler yellow of the eyeball, and that is what I'm erasing currently from the eye. And obviously it's not going to be as white as the highlights, but we'll go over that with some handy dandy pencils. It'll probably be like a 7H or 5H. You can even use a 4H with light pressure. And you can also choose to use your monorays in other parts and just use a very slight pressure, and it will take off less pencil. And obviously if it's dirtier, it won't take off as much either. Okay, so I'm going to take my 5H and we're just gonna detail this out. We're gonna close up that, make it smaller. So basically what I'm doing now with 5H is just to integrate the highlights back into the rest of the tones and the values, so that it is kind of just blending it in, you know, and then we'll repeat the process basically as we go along. So I'm going to take something a bit darker now and take a 6B. So we're going quite dark, and I am going to use this to kind of start just adding more and more depth. So extremely soft with this, not hard at all. You want to build it up. The eye is quite glossy and smooth. You don't want completely grainy texture. Sometimes you can't avoid it. It just adds, if you want to have that more joy type feel to it, you can choose not to blend it out. So I'm actually going to go into the whites as well with this 6B. And don't be afraid to shade this. It is quite dark. And you don't want to keep it light, because then it will detract and look odd. Will actually look out of place. So that's why I think it's very good to use color references. If you're not sure about it, then I will maybe make a copy and put one in black and white. That's what I also did when starting out, just to make sure you're on the right track. It's quite useful to have at hand if you're not quite sure about if you're making the right choice or going on the right path, you know. I'm just going to take my brush, not putting on any extra, and just going around it. There we go. So now I'm going to start moving outside, keeping with my 6B pencil. So I've already covered, so I'm just going over, adding a bit more texture to this area. You know, just like, it's like not a line, it's more like just a dot, and then just like a slight wiggle to the side just to get it there. Keeping 6B. Just working on down here. There we go. Putting it in the wrinkles. They've got some very nice dynamic to their faces. These types of dogs. They're not my personal favorite, the dogs with the stubby snouts and the bad breeding, but they've got quite a dynamic look to them. Got lots of interesting things going on. This is my 2B pencil again. I think they do have quite a bit of character, and you can see it when they're photographed. That they're interesting little chaps, but not my personal favorites. I mean, by that I won't ever get one for myself, but I guess that's everyone's preference. I guess me, having studied animal breeding and genetics and actually doing a master's in it, I think genetics is actually very important to me. I like a good old mutt. We've got one. We call them pavement specials. Mom's a dog, dad's a dog. Probably like a Jack Russell cross wide-haired terrier thing. We're not really sure what it is, but we like him. I like the odd ones, the ones that are just, you know, dogs, not these designer breeds. But one can chat about them all the time. I mean, there is so many to choose from. I don't think I even know half of them, because every time you even look one, you'll probably find one you've never heard of before. So I'm going to leave that for now. I'll kind of want to focus a bit down here, and then my eye is also catching this outer corner of the eye, just to finish it up a bit. So I'm just going to put in the last, I'm not going past this wrinkle. I might blend it out past the wrinkle, but we're not going too far past these wrinkles. This is, so it's got quite short fur. You can see the skin underneath on the muzzle, so it's not long fur at all. So I'm actually gonna take graphite powder just as a base to work off of, tap off the excess, just give myself something to work off of. I prefer not blending out or starting layering. This is my first base layer, and then I like to go off from there. So I'm going to take an H pencil and actually we're going to start kind of hinting at, there's a little ridge and fold here, connects to that. So as you can see, the H pencil is quite a nice one to start with. I usually start with a 2H, but I decided since it is already a bit darker, especially this bottom area, just gonna go in with a pencil that's got a bit more oomph to it, and also it being sharper also carry a bit more weight. So I'm just gonna do that, and then I'm going to, because I don't want to extend it too far down, press in my putty eraser. And then just take, there we go. I'll clean up the rest. Don't want to go too far. So as you can see, I'm not really focusing too much on fur just yet. I do sometimes put in a few strokes for good luck, good measure. But other than that, we're just working on creating the shape, creating the form, putting our lights and our darks. I'm actually going to take a blending sometime. This one looks, not going to use the very, very dirty side. I'm going to use the less dirty side because this is packed full of graphite powder. So I'm going to take my, we're just going to go like this. And I kind of almost scratch it sometimes just to get a bit more of a blend, you know. Then rather than just swirling, just get it up and quickly and move the powder around. Take some graphite powder, actually put on. I'm just going to do the outside so that that line is not very harsh. There we go. I'm going to take, let's take our mono eraser or whatever form of sharp pointy eraser you are using. We're going to start pointy. I need a clean one. There we go. And I'm just going to start putting in little hair here. Pay attention. This is quite short, so it's more like just little short stubby little strokes than it is hair direction. It's standing upright, it's going towards you, so it's not, but once it gets down here, there is direction to the hair. So I'm just putting them in. Here they kind of disappear into the darkness. Here, I'm going to take my 2B pencil again. And we're just going to kind of go in between them. There's a, we will blend over everything, do it again, go back in. We're just basically layering, you know. And with a dark pencil, you'll also be adding depth and layers, because there's quite a prominent dark ridge here as well, and here. Just have not drawn it in yet properly. So I won't be doing too much down here. I might actually, you know what, I'm just gonna take this and go like this. take this darkening away. It's so satisfying when you take the putty eraser and you clean up around your drawing. So you can press and roll, or you can do strokes just to kind of, as you go into it. And I'll also, oh, fingers are dirty. And I'll just take my brush again. It's bothering me now, so I've got to fix it. This is 2H. Oop. Now I'm just going to kind of just go like this, just so that it doesn't just stop. And then you're just going to continue using the 2H on this part of the wrinkle. Up here I'm using quite a hard pressure, not that hard, and it's also the side of the pencil, so it's not as hard as it can be. Let's take something darker. What are you for? 4B pencil. We're gonna start going in here. And we're kind of gonna go on both sides. And we will later go in with a darker pencil to just deepen up that middle little crease even more. There we go. And I don't mind going a bit darker than the reference. I know some people are a bit afraid of going the full 9 yards. I like a good bit of contrast and darkness and light. You need to really go for it. And it's one of your best friends, is the really dark and the really light. Gives very nice depth and dimension. Again, just using like these short wiggly strokes. Not being too precise about it. Still a lot more layering to go in everything. Take your blending stump. But seem counterintuitive to just go over everything, but there is method to the madness. I'm actually going to erase this top line here, so I won't be going all the way out there. Since our last tutorial was actually quite long, this one is a focused one really on just the eye and the surroundings, much like a horse eye tutorial. What I've planned up next is something that I've actually been working on another piece that I hate with all my existence in drawing. Absolutely hate drawing it, and it is also won't actually be an animal part, something you can use on an animal, which can be quite tricky, but we'll take an easy view of it for the first time, so it's not that daunting. Just the putty eraser, I'm just cleaning up around the drawing. Don't be afraid if it looks flat. It all takes time to get the dimension right and everything. So, I always end up looking for a mono eraser. Found it. Mono eraser, any eraser with a nice point to it. When you can take out some nice. Oh, sure. So just same principle we did for the first time. This time there's a lot more going on around it. And you can kind of still see it, even as I blend it, I can still see some of the highlights. And I'm kind of going over some of them, next to some of them, and it just creates this kind of layering effect. You know, and that's what I like using the soft layers, because you can always still see your work underneath and build on top of it as you're going along. Without losing all your detail. Quickly sharpen up my HB. And you'll see I continually will work on both sides. So I'm just using, now I'm going to stroke my pencil up, because it's just easier, because you're going to, your pencil is going to start in the darkest area, so it's not going to leave that very harsh like point and line. And I'm just going to go up into the areas where the hair is, and as I move away I'll start not stroking as but more coloring in motion, back and forth. You know that one, this one. And after this I'm not going to blend, I'm actually going to go in with an even darker pencil. And just continue on with the layering process. So just the trickiest part is going to be blending this out in a kind of normal way. So I'm just going to take my 6B again, I'm going to sharpen it up. And I actually just take my mono eraser quickly and just go like this. Taking my 6B, following the same principle we did with the 4B. Now we're going to kind of start working our way through. Just adding depth and dimension. Once you get up here, I'm going to be more precise, not stroking it out as much, but just more going in and around my highlights. Just for that short stubby first strokes. It's always a lot easier when you've got a bigger space to draw it in. You can actually be more precise. Since we're smaller, we're alluding to the fact that there's fur. It's not going to be as precise. I mean, I'm not by any means saying I'm a hyper-realism artist. I admire people who can do that, but I am nowhere near that anywhere yet. I mean, that's a whole different level of skill, and when you do those types of things, I think it's a lot easier the bigger you go, and I just don't have the patience to go that big. Well, currently I have something just slightly larger than A2 in the works, if you've been following my Instagram page. That's the largest I've went in a very long time, and I haven't completed a drawing that big ever, so that should be fun, and we'll see how long it takes me, because I can take forever on pieces. I'm going to take my H pencil, and we're just going to blend in where we took our 6B. We're also going to go up here to this little area. Just kind of also just take a itty bitty blending stump. Just slightly go over it, not really. Kind of feather it out. You can even take your finger. As I really like using an H pencil to blend out a B pencil. I think it just blends it up beautifully and creates this very smooth, rich, well, as rich as black and white can get, but just very nice effect. Especially if you don't want to use blending stumps, you can just use pencils to blend other pencils out, and it's a lot. I like the effect more when you use H to blend out B than B to blend out H. But you can start off with an H pencil and then go over with B and then blend with the H. That's also works very well. I quite like that. So just with my H pencil, open this little, where the little fake eye is on these dogs, the little black spots above the eye. I mean, I'm not going to hop too long on the fur, since it's not the main aim of the tutorial. Still using my edge pencil, keeping in mind the direction of the fur, and actually sometimes it is beneficial to use fur strokes, like the actual movement of the pencil, for that type of thing. But I always blend over the top of it. My dirty little fingers. Still using my edge pencil. And with this little black spot, I'm gonna kind of fluff it out. It's not really my main aim of this tutorial. The next focus tutorial will be much more structured and it won't have this feathering out around the drawing, as it will be quite specific shape and form and everything. Just quickly blend, and actually before also blend where I put in those strokes. I'm gonna go in with another pencil. Why do I keep losing my mono eraser? Oh, here it is. I'm literally one of those people where I can put something right in front of me and I will always look for it in some way, shape or form. Don't ask me how. Okay, so I'm just going to take my mono eraser and just detail out here. Because there is little, just like I did with this previous spot, I'm going to use a jelly roll just for that very white highlights. And while I'm at it, I'm just going to lighten that up a bit. And also, this is how easy I get distracted, is I'll just see something and I'll just go straight towards it. So erasing can sometimes be a very good tool to just add back the depth and dimension. I mean, it's one of the easiest ways to just draw out a drawing, to make stuff happen, you know. Give direction, give form, add a little bit of, as you can see, suddenly there is light, there's something's happened, although it's not as bright as it can be, but we will add pencil to it and it will just come to life again. And even just with the feathering out, it can just create that extra bit of movement. So we're just gonna hair stroke it out over here as well. There's this highlighted area, kind of the upper lid. So as I go through drawings, I'll start seeing things that I didn't notice before. That's why I don't ever draw something in a day, I always kind of come back to it over a multitude of days, just because I always see things that I didn't notice before, even with small drawings. But that's just me. I get easily distracted and bored, so it's inevitable for me for revisiting things over more than one day. There we go. So that erasing did quite a few things now. Just gave a little bit of extra stuff going on. Added in some highlights. This is my 2B pencil, by the way. Is it? There we go. Made some things happen. So we're just gonna kind of work off of what we're doing. Kind of want to finish off the fur part of this so that we can finish up at the detailing in the eye and get this tutorial wrapped up. I mean, this is also a good exercise if you maybe give yourselves a time limit. I have been thinking of maybe doing a 1.5 hour sketch tutorial. So please let me know if you are interested in that. I will just put up a little thing on my page, and that will, I think I'll just do it for all tiers that have video benefits, so $5 tier and up. Just like every now and again, just do a sketch, not every month, just, you know, to give some variety, maybe have some fun. A little 1 hour sketch with me, I think it's good. I've quite liked this all sketching thing. Good way just to loosen up, test yourself, see what you're made of, you know. So I sometimes like employing those types of ways of drawing into smaller types of drawings. Maybe have looser areas and a more detailed part, like I was saying. Choose your details, choose your battles. What do you want to highlight? What's your focal point? What's important? You know? What do you want the viewer's eyes to focus on? You know? Those types of things. So I think that will be quite interesting to do every now and again, just to loosen everyone up a bit. Maybe every second month, since they're quite quick to film. It's an hour and a half. Not a lot of work goes into them. Maybe do some where we just use graphite powder and blending stumps and erasers. Maybe 1 or 2 pencils. I've done that before and I've quite enjoyed that. That was very fun. Very fun experience. I really liked doing that. Just using graphite powder is so much fun. It's like being a kid playing with art stuff, you know. So I'm actually gonna go in with something darker with my Can it be? Yes. Okay. So this is an 8B pencil. I'm just gonna go all over with this one because when I have a very dark B pencil in my hands, I kind of tend to not stay in one place. Tend to move around with it a lot and go everywhere. I really like B pencils. Really, really like them. As you can see, oh, just look at that. It's nice and dark. Makes me so happy. And it just instantly adds flavor to your drawing. And it's such a soft pencil to even do lighter work with. So let's put it down here. Even go over top of some of those darker pieces. There we go. So sometimes I'm very loose with it. I really sometimes look at the reference when I do go on these B pencil tangents of mine, and then I just kind of look at the drawing from my own perspective and think, where do I want to add depth? Where do I want to go with it? What do I want to add? What is my eye focusing on? You know, am I seeing something that I want to add some depth to, play around with more? See, you can do subtle things with the B pencil, especially a darker one. And sometimes you just have to trust your instincts. That will kind of lead you in the right way. And it just adds life. Oh, just love it. If you haven't noticed by now, I do love my B pencils. Especially the very dark ones. Usually when I do the sketches, I don't go as dark because otherwise I will become a bit more detail orientated. Maybe for really dark pieces, or I don't know, just like an eye part or something else, I'll maybe add a bit of depth, but I usually stick to go up to about a 5B or something. Not much darker than that when I'm sketching. But I think that will be a really fun exercise to do. Just to different type of a tutorial, more like, not a tutorial, more like a draw with me, where you can just put on some, maybe I just put on some music and then you can sketch along and see what I'm doing, but kind of find your own flow and vibe. It's not possible for me to do live streams as of yet. I just don't have the means to do it. And I'm sometimes I sometimes have to edit out the weirdest things in my videos, so I don't want you into that chaos. But yeah, I think that will be fun. Just, you know, you put on some music, or I put on some music, maybe put on a podcast and just listen. So now I'm looking at it, I'm thinking maybe add more highlights in the eye. How that we've added that darkness. we need to put in our contrasting light. So I'm just gonna, you know, play around with what we already have, but kind of more. Don't be afraid to use your fingers while you're going. They are useful tools. And they are the original blending thumbs. I mean, we've all done that. And I'm just also, I'm going to go in with the jelly roll as well. I'm just going to darken up this blending stump. Has seen better days. Just blend this out. So I'm actually going to take a bigger one. Just to blend this out. Actually, let's take the very dirty parts. The dirty part works very well. So, mono eraser at hand. Continue on. And you can kind of do your own loose interpretation of this blending. So I'm actually going to take my jelly roll and show you what I want to add a bit of highlight to. Just like we did around here. And I'm just going to press it out. We're going to go back in with a pencil around it. This is just for, you know, there are these certain little spots that just has this very nice white highlight. I've seen some people use like a white pencil, but I'm not sure what type of pencil that is. So it's not very hard to miss these little white spots. Some of them are quite prominent, you can't miss them. Like those ones, I'll blend them in further. I'll just kind of accentuate this one. I don't really want to mess with this too much. If we put something underneath it, there we go. So I'm going to take a sharpened B pencil. This is a 4B. And I'm just going to clean up, you know, integrate it into the drawing. Make it look organic. Yeah, let's add the veins. So I'm just taking this 4B that I have in my hand and very slight pressure. You're gonna kind of, I don't want to say sketch it out, but almost kind of very loosely, like the softest you can go, possibly, to just allude to them. We're just gonna continue on. I'm not gonna fuss too much anymore with the fur surrounding. It's not my main focus. We've all got to learn to just pick something, so I'm just gonna add more little stuff into the eye. Play around with it, add some shapes and little dots and things that you see around. So I'm going to take my mono eraser for a bit more, to add just like hints of things. Just gonna take my 2B, just kind of close out this area. It's quite blurred in the reference, so I'm not gonna take any stump and just taking the blending stump to something to this. Take my I'm kind of just blending out and over. So going to do the same down here. Mono eraser. I can faff around a lot in the end. I'm just gonna there we go. I'm going to sign it because the eye was kind of this little thing was the most important. The rest was fluff. It's quite fun. You just play around with it. You go with a bit odd new textures around here. Some very nice little bluff thingies. So I'm just going to sign. put on the desk. There we go, done and dusted. So that's the little French eye. If you have any other suggestions for focus tutorials, you're more than welcome to let me know. Message me, tell me on Instagram. No, but I've already got something in store for next month's focus tutorial because I've been struggling with it in a larger piece. See if you can figure out what your next little challenge is going to be, because therefore I will be struggling. I promise you it will be a thing, but it will be a more easier view than the full-on straight in your face thing. But it's on an animal, it's not actually animal fur or anything, it's a different type of texture. So I think that will be fun. So I do hope you like this little tutorial. I will post the full reference because sometimes I find it's easier sometimes if you have to maybe zoom out a bit to get like an overall look. If you maybe want to start the eye, maybe draw out even more than I did, you're more than welcome to do that. You know, make a full drawing of it and not just like me, make a little focus tutorial for you all. So yeah, I hope you enjoy this. Happy drawing, happy creating, and I'll see you for the next one.